How about like a title match, like a world title match? What can a guy do in a world title match to make that separate or stand apart from like a regular match?
Keep his mouth shut and his ears open and listen to everything the champion tells him. Because the champion wouldn't be the champion unless he knew what he was doing, in most cases. This is one of those that the times may have changed because there's so many title matches now. And fans my age and people who were fans when I was a kid, they could remember the dates and places and times and cities that every title changed hands in. You could go from Pat O'Connor, Gene Kiniski, Dory Funk Jr., to Harley Race, Jack Briscoe, blah, 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 and quote it. And now titles change so often that you can't keep track of it. It doesn't have the same meaning. But when I was a kid and I got a chance to see a world title match, that was once a year that I'd see it live. And I'm like, wow. And even to the point where a lot of the people who were kind of smart, and there was nobody smart in those days like there is now. The first time I ever heard the phrase high spot, I was in Memphis TV dressing room for my first day as manager. That's the first time I ever heard the phrase high spot. Because there was no internet, there were no newsletters, and that shit didn't get repeated. So people would say, say what you want to, but those world title now, those things are on the level, because even people who were smart. So you worked it a little more seriously. You obviously the champion was always a guy who could work with anybody, or most time was, and it was presented more as a prestigious deal. You never saw it on television. You always had to go to the arenas. Now it'd be the equivalent of pay-per-view. I hate when there's free world title matches on television because, Matt Morgan, the OVW champion this year, I think he went 4 months without wrestling, but maybe once on television because he's the champion. And we were doing our Six Flags shows. And he would come out and not use these words because we'd been kicked off the air, but basically he'd say, you motherfuckers have to pay to see me Friday night at Six Flags because I'm the champion and I'm too good to wrestle on television. But I will take John Cena or Nick Dinsmore or Big Bad John or Chris Benoit or whoever it may be, and I'll show them why they call me the Blueprint. And he would talk them into the building. They pay to see the champion. Things are more television oriented now. People are, getting rights fees for television. So of course you got to change with the times. But still, title matches should always, I think, be protected as a little something a little more special, a little more serious. Only with people. If I have my champion wrestler, that's just the OVW champion. He's champion of the Ohio Valley. Jeez, what's next? The Poughkeepsie heavyweight champion, But at the same time, if he wrestles on television, it's either in a title match against a top contender, or it's in a non-title match because how does Josephus out of the barn here get a title match? If it's real, if it's something prestigious that people should want and go for and fight for and want to possess, then how does the fourth guy from the bottom of your babyface, roster get a title match? Because you want to have a title match on TV. Well, fuck. Big shit. People are going, we don't give a fuck, so it's a title match. The guy ain't going to win, so you're just devaluing your title matches.
How about within the match? What should guys do within the match to make the title more important? Or should there be like more pinfalls, for instance, or more false finishes, or does that depend on what kind of champion it is?
Well, it does, but also, it's not necessarily, there always should be a lot of false finishes, especially toward the end, a guy trying to win, whether it be the heel on top trying to put the babyface away because he figures he's in trouble and he's got to do it quick, or the babyface gets a second lease on life, and he's really putting the pressure on the guy to get the people on the edge of their seat. Is he going to win? Is he going to win? Is he going to win? Especially if you're going to pull the rug out from under him. But that's for any great main event match. It doesn't necessarily have to be confined to a title match. And I just think that, when I would go back and watch Harley Race or Ric Flair, or actually even before that, Jack Briscoe for the Style of the Day, those were the epitome of title matches. And those guys really knew how to do things right. And if you can go back 50 years and say Lou Thez, the style has changed, but the champion should always have a little bit more aura.
Okay. Who are some of the wrestlers, maybe current day would be better, but some of the guys from another era that people should study, and why should they study these people?
Well, we can't go too far back because there's no way to study many of the people until the mid-'70s because there was no videotape and very little film. Once again, I'm very heavy on Jerry Lawler because, God, he was a classic babyface. He was a classic heel for his time, for his region. And who else do you know that has drawn crowds to the same building in the same moderately sized southern city for the past 30 years? And he just sold 5,000 tickets to see him and not much else, in the Coliseum like, a month ago. He started main eventing there in 1974. And in 1 year alone, he drew like 370-something thousand paid admissions with him on top most of the time. You got to watch Ric Flair, obviously. Now, I'm not going to talk about a lot of the newer guys because everybody's seen them and everybody's studied them. I'm not trying to knock or leave out a Mick Foley or a Steve Austin or a Rock or some major name like that from the past 5 years. But if you want to go back, study Dusty Rhodes because of his gift of talking, his promos, his ability to talk people in. And I mean, look at Dusty. I mean, he was not the most physically imposing as far as a bodybuilder, but the people thought he was tough. The people believed in him. When you go back, you look at anybody that drew money, that was on top for a long period of time, especially in more than one territory. All the NWA champions. For that matter, a lot of the top stars that worked St. Louis. A lot of the top guys in Florida, big wrestling territory. The 80s tapes from Atlanta, TBS both before and after Crockett took over. The guys can learn something from almost anybody that was really in a money-drawn position in this business. There were flukes and flashes in the pan and people who made it 6 months in one territory and never went anywhere else again. Leave that for later. But watch the top guys. Watch the guys that had the titles, that carried the territories, that got most of the television time. I guess what I'm saying is, watch old stuff. Because now what's old is new again. We wouldn't be doing the Midnight Express reunion after 20 years if they didn't want to see that stuff lingered in people's memory. We're not going to go out there and do the same kind of match we did 20 years ago because we're all 20 years older. But what we did 20 years ago lingered in the fans' memories to where they want to see it again. If the wrestlers of today can take from the guys today and also take from the guys of 20 years ago and see maybe Dory Funk Jr. and Jack Briscoe, St. Petersburg, Bayfront Center. They went 60 minutes. They had a legitimate wrestling match. You couldn't see a hole in anything. They didn't hit the ropes that much. There was a lot of 3 or 4 minute headlocks in that 60 minutes. Wouldn't play today. People's attention spans are shorter. They got remote controls, they got clickers, they got MTV, instant gratification, escort service. Can I have a blowjob and a pizza? I'm surprised that hadn't been done, by the way. Yeah, pizza and escort service. Get it all done all at the same time. But anyway, so what you do is you take that 60-minute match, you take out the 4-minute headlock, you put in a 20-second headlock, but you do the shit that they were doing elsewise, and you got a nice 18, 20-minute match, and it looks good, and it'll be exciting. Add the shit you can do. When you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. When you steal from many, it's research. Do what fits you and get these little ideas, these little tips, these little hints. And you can see what guys did to get over and make themselves memorable. Because ultimately it's about selling tickets, it's about drawing money, and you can't do that unless people remember you and they know when they came to see you they got their money's worth. And why did they? Because you did something that connected with them. And there's so many moves now being done that are death-defying and guys are putting themselves in hospital. But at the same time, it boils down to this. The check is the same for the match, whether you go to the hospital or whether you just have a nice match and go home to your family. So I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying don't lay your body on the line in the right situation, but pick your spots. And more importantly, it's not how many bumps you take. It's when you take the bump that you do take and whether the people like it, remember it, and it means something. Get the match over, you don't have to kill yourself. So everybody needs to think more, bump less, and realize that it's performance art, you're telling a story, you're connecting with an audience, and if you have the personality, the capability, and the psychology, then there's been a lot of people that weren't real athletic in this business made a lot of money just because they could get the people here. And that's what you need to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
And with that, I take a small bow.